Hello and welcome to the Monroe Method Clancast. I'm Jason Monroe and this is episode 77. Today we are going to talk about finding a way. But to begin, let's rewind back to your late teens, early 20s, or at least my late teens, early 20s, where going out clubbing till 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, coming home, jumping into bed for a few hours, getting up and going out to work was perfectly normal. Something I did multiple times per week. So, just to give you some background, before I became a nutritionist back in 2018, I worked in a concrete products manufacturer called Marshalls, or as we were called there, Marshalls Mono, or that's what we called it at least. Marshalls, big up and down the nation. You're bound to have heard of them, landscaping company. And my job was to watch big machines make slabs, and towards the end of my time there, monoblock all day. Pretty manual job, long shifts, 12 and a half hours, but there was a time when I worked a 4 on, 4 off rotation, and it was actually the same in a couple of jobs previous to that. I also worked a 4 on, 4 off rotation. And what that meant is the best 4 days off was when you got a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But there's only 7 days in a week. You're on an 8-day rotation. Those 4 days moved a day every week. So you got the best consecutive weekends was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then it starts to get a bit shit with Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And when your days are days off are Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday, or even Wednesday to Saturday. You know, back in those days, I was going out to see DJs at clubs, and there would be specific nights on. And if there was a night I wanted to go to and it landed on my 4 days on, that's fine. I didn't waste holidays on it. I would finish work, go through on my night out, and come back into work the next again day. And it's because I placed more value on my nightlife, on my social life, on seeing DJs, on music, on clubbing, than I did being awake enough and energized enough to do my job. Because, I mean, realistically, it didn't really impact my job at the time. It did when I worked in the call center at Thomas Cook, and I was terrible at selling holidays, and I eventually got sacked. The only job I've ever been sacked from. I did eventually get sacked from that job. When was I? What age was I then? 20, back in my 20s. So yeah. Now let's fast forward into the future, right? There are countless things that you don't do because you think you don't have time, or you think you're too busy for. Now, ultimately, you will always find time, energy, and money for the things that matter most. I mean, if I go back then, right? If someone might say, "Do you want to go to the cinema?" I'd say, "Nah, I'm skint." Do you want to go to the pub? Yeah, okay. You know, you were skint a minute ago, but all of a sudden you can go to the pub, and it's because, well, I didn't really want to go see a movie, but I fucking love to go to the pub and have a few drinks. You will find the time, the energy, and the money for the things that you place most value on. You know, I work with, or I almost work with people who think paying a nutritionist £48 a month is too expensive. Yet they will go and spend 48 quid on a single dinner. You know, they'll have you seen how expensive it is to order from Domino's? You know, they'll go and spend 30, 40 quid in a Domino's. No problem. But they think that, you know, £48 is too much to spend on their own health. And it just comes down to the value that people see in it. You know, when I've worked with lots of people over the years who've said that you're not charging enough. And then there's lots of people who haven't yet worked with you who just look at it from the outside and say, oh, that's too expensive. And it just comes back to the value thing. You know, I would never spend £300 on a jacket or a pair of trainers, whereas there are people who would. I mean, I'm sure that if the day ever came where I spent 300 quid on an item of clothing and it turned out to be the best quality thing I've ever worn, then maybe I would be inclined to spend that again. But until that happens, until I win the lottery, I will not be buying clothes that expensive. I will continue to live in my Monroe Nutrition t-shirts. But it comes down to the value that you place on things. You know, People say that they don't have time. Oh, it's because of the kids, it's because of work, it's because of this. If I asked to see that person's screen time, if I said, go into your phone, if it's Android, go into your well-being settings, take a look at your screen time, 4 hours per day. You are spending 4 hours per day switching between WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, TikTok, Snapchat's still a thing, Facebook, Instagram. You're playing games on your phone, you're checking the football scores, you're doing this, you're doing that, playing games of Candy Crush. 4 hours a day, 35 hours. No, it's not. 4 hours a day. 4 sevens? 28. 4 hours a day, 28 hours a week you are spending on your phone. And this was one of my biggest shifts, especially when I first became a nutritionist. When I first started doing what I was doing, working from a laptop, coaching lots of people, I went through a I've not got time phase. I'd tell my wife, I've not got time for that. I would tell my co-coach, Louise, not got time for that. I'm too busy. I was always too busy. And I read a book one day. I thought I had it on my shelf behind me. It must be on my other bookshelf. I read a book one day. It's called, oh no, do you know what? I gave away my copy to someone in the group. It's called How to Break Up with Your Phone. I don't remember the author. It's called How to Break Up with Your Phone. And it was all about how our phones are designed to hook us in from the moment we wake up. There's a reason that your phone has an alarm clock. It's not because it's a super convenient thing. It's because your phone, the companies, the people that run your apps, the people that design your phones, they want your phone to be the first thing you put in your hand every morning. Why? Because you pick up that phone, you slide your alarm, and all you've got on the screen is notifications. This person, Jessica, commented on your post. Stephen liked that post. Such and such done this. Somebody shared that. And the notification game has already started. You tap on the Facebook and you go in and you go, oh, that was a nice thing for her to say. I'll just type her a reply. And then while I'm here, I'm just going to look at that thing. And then I'm watching videos, and now I'm looking at my feed, and now I'm looking at what everyone else in the world is doing, rather than getting myself out of bed and getting ready and all the rest of it. And before you know it, you've lost 30 minutes of your morning. You've had to rush to get changed, rush to get out the door. You've not taken any lunch to work with you. You've not prepped anything, and you're grabbing and going and all the rest of it. And people will say, I don't have time. I don't have time to prep meals. I don't have time to think about what I'm eating for the day. It's a struggle getting out the door. Yeah, because you're given 30 minutes in the morning to your fucking phone. Anyway, if you place value on something, you will find the time for it. So take a look at your life. What do you do every single day without fail? Do you watch Netflix? Do you watch TV? Do you scroll your phone? Are there specific websites that you visit? Are there specific apps that you open? Do you have apps that you go through on rotation? Do you have apps that you just tap your phone and open for no reason whatsoever, just because it's pure habit? And then at home, what things do you do on a daily basis? You drink coffee, you put your makeup on, you wash your hair, you brush your teeth, you go for a shower, you iron your clothes. Think of all the things that you do in a day. Now think about the reasons attached to them. Why do you brush your teeth? Well, because you don't want to have horrible teeth or stinky breath or whatever the case might be. Why do you make sure you drink coffee every day? Why do you go to the expense of spending money on coffee every week, every month, every fortnight? Why do you go to the time and effort of boiling the kettle and making a coffee every single morning without fail? Because you see value in it. You get something from it. And if we rewind to my misspent youth, where I spent a lot of time in clubs and not a lot of time doing a good job at work, why was it perfectly acceptable in my eyes, in my mind, to go on a night out on a school night? And it's because I saw more value in the thing. So yes, life does get busy as you get older. Kids, family, relationships, bills, responsibilities, all those things. Yes, life does get busier. But that's not the reason that you're not taking care of yourself. That's not the reason that you're slowing down, because you still find times, you still find you still find the time to make sure you drink alcohol every week. There are people who would not dream of going through a weekend where they don't drink alcohol. I did a post recently on Instagram talking about this because one of my clients had spoke about, that's how I like to signify the end of the working week with a bottle of wine. And that's an idea that they've created. They've created the idea that you can't end the week without a bottle of wine. So that's a part of their lifestyle. They make sure every single week that when they go to the shop, or they would go to the shop just to buy a bottle of wine, to have their Friday night bottle of wine. And I kind of spoke about that. And, if you can be consistent with that, imagine transferring that consistency to your diet. Imagine transferring that consistency to your exercise. Imagine transferring that consistency to your hobbies, to the things that you enjoy, the things that you say you don't have time for. Oh, I don't have time to go hill walking anymore. I don't have time to go running anymore. I don't have time for the gym anymore. But you do have the time. You're just misplacing it because you're giving that time to something that you see more value in. I spend a lot of time on my phone. I'm using it right now, recording this video podcast. I'll extract the audio. I spend a lot of time on my phone. I detest a lot of the time that I spend on my phone. A lot of it's essential. I have to post things from my phone. I have to comment stuff from my phone. I use it for work a lot. But then there's always the draw that if you're using it for work, then it's easy to get pulled in for stuff that is a waste of time. I don't go on Facebook anymore now that I've moved the Monroe Method to its own app away from Facebook. I have not been on my own Facebook account since last October. Don't use it anymore. That's one massive time sink that's disappeared from my life. Instagram is probably about the only app I use. I kind of dabble in TikTok. I post videos on it sometimes. I've never quite cracked it. But if I was to look at my screen time on my phone, the thing that gets the most time would be Instagram or Formula One stuff. But if you were to go into your phone, you would see where you're losing your life. Not for everyone, but for the vast majority of people, you are losing your life to your phone. Your age just keeps going up, and the amount of time that you dedicate to your phone is scary. If you're spending, when I took on my very first batch of private one-to-one clients, one of the exercises I had them go through is I asked them all to go into their screen time, take a screenshot, and send it to me. And a couple of them were outrageous, like getting into double figures of how much time they were spending on their phones in a day. Not every day, but on days where it was realistic, because they worked in jobs where their phone was on a desk next to them. We were getting into the 10, 11, 12, sometimes 14 hours spent on their phone. And it's like, what could you do? People often talk about not having enough hours in a day, right? What could you do with an extra 14 hours in a day? Even like for people who don't use their phones as much, 2, 3, 4 hours. What could you do if your days were 2, 3, 4 hours longer? How much extra could you get done? You can make your day longer by taking that time back. And it brings it kind of back to the point where you will always find a way to make sure that the things you want to do get done. And if we bring that back to like our habits and our hobbies and trying to improve our lifestyle, trying to lose weight, trying to exercise more, all these things, the reason that you don't do these things, the reason you don't take care of yourself, the reason that you don't exercise, don't eat well, and all the rest of it is ultimately, and this can be a very tough pill to swallow, is ultimately because you don't want to. Now, yes, a part of you likes the idea of being able to run 10Ks. A part of you likes the idea of being someone who goes to the gym 3 days a week. A part of you likes the idea of being someone that doesn't drink as much as you do. But that part of you is not as big of the part of you as the part that doesn't want to do these things. Because if you wanted to go to the gym 3 times a week, you would be doing it. If you wanted to improve your diet, you would be doing it. If you wanted to lose weight, you would be taking the steps to get there. Now, this is not the same as not wanting it enough. I know it sounds very similar, but that's the kind of horrible message that coaches say to people. Oh, you're not doing this. You must not want it enough. When I work with people inside the Monroe Method, there are often times where they'll post in the group and say, I need a kick up the bum. I need a kick up the bum. I need a talking to. I need, I need motivated. They want me to step in. Basically, when it boils down, they want me to step in and tell them that they should be taking their goals seriously. Now that's not my job. That's not the job of a nutritionist. It's not my job to tell you that you should be taking your health seriously. That's on you. The thing that I tell them is that in coaching and self-improvement and losing weight and all the rest of it, there is a bare minimum requirement. And that bare minimum requirement is that you have to want to do it. If you don't want to do it, how am I going to get you to want to do it? If there's one thing I have learned from the years that I've been doing this, you can't make people want to do things. It doesn't work. I'm surrounded on a daily basis by family members, by friends, people that I know who don't take very good care of themselves. And is it down to me to step in and say to that person, you should probably stop abusing your body with alcohol and food and cigarettes and whatever? It's not for me to step. That's what that person wants to do to their body. That's not for me to comment on, or to pass judgment on or decide what they're doing. That's that person's body. It has no impact on me. Yes, you can do that. That's up to you. And it's the same when people come to work with me. It's not up to me to step in and say to someone, you need to stop eating like this. You need to stop drinking like this. You need to start taking better care of yourself. The person already knows. They already know. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming to work with you. That's not what my job is. My job is to show people. And when I say that when I say that it's not my job to motivate people and all the rest of it, when someone makes a comment like that in the group or makes a post, I always preface it by saying, listen, it's not my job to do this thing, but behind the scenes, I already know that what I'm about to say after that is going to motivate them. I already know that what I say out, because this is how it happens, right? Somebody says, I need a kick up the bum. I reply and say, it's not up to me to give you a kick up the bum. You have to want to do this. And then I paint this picture and say, look, you joined here because, and I'll go back to the first check-in or the first post to the group, and I'll say, back on the 22nd of January, you said this, this, and this. Are these things not important to you anymore? Do these things not mean anything to you anymore? Do you not want to be healthy for your children anymore? Do you not want to set a good example? Basically use their own words back at them. And that's not me doing anything. That's not me using me as a source to say, you should be taking this seriously. You need to think about your health. You need to think about the future. That's not me doing that. That's me taking that person's words and saying, this is what you told me 3 months ago. Do these things not matter to you anymore? Do you not want to still be here in 10 years? You said you wanted to still be here to see grandchildren growing up. Do you not want to be here to see grandkids growing up? And yes, it's not me giving them a direct kick up the bum, but it's me using their own words against them. And that's more than any kick up the bum that they need. Anyway, God, I've wandered right off the topic on this one. So when it boils down to it, you are finding a way to do countless things on a daily basis that you place value on. You make sure you get takeaways every week. You make sure you go to McDonald's every other day. You make sure you drink alcohol at the weekend. You make sure you stay up watching Netflix. You make sure you spend 3 and 4 hours a day on your phone. While it might not feel like these things are intentional, like if you didn't want to do these things, you wouldn't be doing them. And this is a conversation we have a lot inside the group, where someone will, they'll say, my eating's been out of control for a few days. And unless you have a diagnosed eating disorder, or someone looks like they may have the signs of an eating disorder, in which case I would refer them on to work with someone else, because that's not my department. Unless you have a diagnosed eating disorder, like binge eating disorder, where you are experiencing a complete and total loss of control around food, you're in control of what you're doing. you wanted to eat that takeaway. You wanted to drink that bottle of wine and then eat all those crisps and then eat all that chocolate. That's not being out of control. That's you intoxicating yourself, knowing full well what will happen because it's the same thing that's happened every other time you've had a bottle of wine. You were completely in control of that. You chose that. So yeah, I lost the flow on where the control thing was going. But people often say that they feel out of control, and yeah, and it's not a loss of control. You've done exactly what you wanted to do. I mean, alcohol is always an easy one to pick on, and I have always picked on alcohol. Even when I still drank, I picked on alcohol because it was always the easiest one. Where if you drink, you know you're going to have a hangover. And this is quite a good, actually, final thing to end on. It's the kind of lesson between the amount of value you place on something, right? You know that every time you drink a bottle of wine, you will wake up the next day feeling like this, right? You know that because you've drunk hundreds of bottles of wine in your time, probably, or whatever your tipple is if you drink. You know what's going to happen. You know what the result's going to be, and yet, you still do the thing because you see more value in getting pissed for a few hours. I mean, I explained this in an email recently. I basically said that, if you have a bottle of wine at 7 o'clock on a Friday night and you spend an hour drinking it and you go to your bed about midnight, you've had 5 hours of being drunk and whatever you get out of being drunk. So it started at 7 o'clock that night. You've woken up the next day and you feel terrible. You feel terrible for that entire day. So in exchange for 5 hours of whatever you get from drinking, that you felt that was worth losing 24 hours of having a shitty 24 hours. I saw a great, who said it? It was someone on Instagram, but it was someone famous. It was James Corden. Now, I don't know when this was from. It was an interview, but he said that getting drunk is borrowing time from tomorrow, it's borrowing happiness from tomorrow. And it's like you're super injecting. This is my kind of add on to it, right? But let's say you're relatively happy just now, right? And you go and drink a bottle of wine, and you become even happier. And because you're relaxed and your inhibitions are lowered and all the rest of it, you've not got a care in the world, all those stresses have melted away, and now you feel great. But it's like you've borrowed that happiness from tomorrow, and it comes with an exchange rate. So 1 hour of drunken happiness today equates to 3 hours of happiness tomorrow. And if you spend 5 hours getting drunk, that's 15 hours of happiness that you're stealing from the next day. This is the bit that I'm just making up on the spot. And then and when people choose to drink alcohol, they do it knowing how they're going to feel the next day. When I went out clubbing to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I knew full well work was going to be fucking horrendous the next day. I was going to hate every minute of that 12.5-hour shift. It was going to be the slowest, most horrible day in the world. And yet, it did not stop me going out and going to the Archies or going to the sub club or wherever I was going in Glasgow. It didn't stop me because it wasn't enough to deter me, because going out for a few hours at night was far more important to me than ruining my entire day the next day. Granted, it was a day at work, not a day in the house, so it was kind of less bad. But it was still a horrific thing to go through. And I didn't just do it once, I did it for years. Not every single week, that makes me sound terrible, but if there was a DJ on that I really wanted to see or a night out that I really wanted not to pass up on, I was there multiple times per year for years. And now at the ripe old age of 38, I'll be 39 in July, I don't drink anymore. But even when I stopped drinking back in 2022, the thought of a hangover was enough to deter me a lot of the time. When you're younger, you just think about the drinking part, right? You just think, and your mind just goes around alcohol. Your mind is based on the benefit part, the enjoyment part, the fun part. You don't think twice about the outcome. As you get older, it's like okay, there's a night out, but I've got that thing on the next day. Do I really want to feel like shit the next day? And you start thinking, you think more about the consequences of your actions. That's probably, you know, a great way of explaining how, youth going into being older works, right? When you're younger, you think less about the consequences. As you get older, you start to think more about the consequences. But even at that, I still work with countless people who understand fully what the consequences are, and they still do the thing anyway. I worked. I'll end on this one. I worked with someone last year who tried very hard to help. She was fully aware that her drinking habits were the problem, and she was not willing to change them. And when she did eventually cancel her membership, she cancelled it and said, um, I've been with you for 6 months and my weight's still the same. This hasn't worked for me. And all I could think was, that's absolutely nonsense. Like, your weight is still the same because you refused to change the thing that was driving your weight up. She would binge drink every weekend, and she would eat massively to excess both under the influence and then afterwards while nursing a hangover. And it was the one, it was her bottleneck. When we talk about a bottleneck, it's like, so when coaching, when we come to problem solving, we're always looking for bottlenecks, right? So you're trying to lose weight, but this thing keeps happening, right? This is the bottleneck at the moment. Let's work on that, resolve it, and then see how you go. And then you unblock that bottleneck, and then someone will make great progress, and then they'll bump into something else, right? Looking at everything, this is the one thing we need to work on right now. Let's work on this. And it's not until you remove these bottlenecks that you free up the next thing to be worked on. This person's bottleneck, it wasn't the overeating or the hangover, nursing the hangovers. Like, none of that could happen without the binge drinking. And she, when she first started working with me, she said in her very first post, my problem is alcohol. My problem is drinking at the weekend. I don't know when to stop. I just keep going until, I can't remember anything, blah, blah, blah. She knew that was her problem, but she didn't want to let it go. Now, maybe she had a problem with alcohol. I don't know. That's not for me to say or decide. Some people just, she had a big group of friends and alcohol was the main focal point. So people don't have to have an alcohol problem for it to be a problem. But she was not willing to change it. I didn't ask her to give up on it. I didn't ask her to stop drinking. I didn't ask her to go sober or anything like that. I just, kind of repeatedly said at check-ins, you're checking in every fortnight and you're telling me the same thing. You're doing great during the week, but Friday night comes and you're either drinking on Friday night or Friday and Saturday night. You're consuming thousands and thousands of calories across the weekend and you're getting nowhere. Like, at which point are you going to, when are you going to be willing to make a change to the thing? And I think she at some point said that she couldn't imagine her life without drinking the way she was, because it's what all her friends did. And that's just one of those things where it's not that person's right time yet. She might have she was in her early 20s, she might have 5-10 years more of that to go through, and she might gain a lot of weight during those 5 to 10 years until she eventually reaches a point where she can look back and say, this drink thing's got to stop. So that's just one of those instances of kind of someone who wants to make a change but doesn't want to make the change enough to give up on the things that need to be changed to help them get there. But also, it may be just not the right time in that specific person's life. But a great example of someone who, even though they know the negative impact this is having on their health and by extension their weight, they're still not willing to, not even to give it up, but to make any kind of change to it. Anyway, I feel like that was a bit of a rambly, all over the place episode, but it comes down to, like, the reason I said this was I had written something down on my phone that said, it's not that you got a job and had kids and got a house. The problem is you just stopped finding a way. And yes, life does get busy, but if you want to, you will still find a way. You'll stop frittering time away on Facebook, on Instagram, on whatever else you waste time on your phone, and start claiming those hours back and using them for something. But yeah, if you want to do something, you'll find a way. It's got me thinking now. Like, I keep talking about climbing more Monroes. And I'm not doing it because I'm just not finding a way. But my wife is doing something at the moment with the dogs that's kind of time sensitive. She's trying to get her puppy Erin her junior warrant card. So my weekends are filled with being a stay-at-home dad while mummy goes off touring the country with a couple of golden retrievers chasing the accolades and the success with them. Anyway, that's my shit, not your shit. Until next time.